Welcome back to Murder on Record, where every case is etched in blood and the truth is buried in the fine print.
Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we dig through those dusty files, the overlooked evidence, and the whispered testimonies.
To bring long-forgotten crimes back into the light.
That's right.
Today, we're plunging into a Sin City story with a really dark twist. The 2004 murder of Jay Orbin and the conviction of his wife, Marjorie.
It's a case that, well, it blends that Vegas glitz with a truly brutal desert reality.
Yeah, it leaves us sifting through the facts and considering some pretty unsettling questions.
This one grabs you immediately, doesn't it? You've got Marjorie Orbin, a former showgirl,
Mm-hmm.
and her husband Jay, who is a successful businessman. Jewelry, art, that sort of thing.
And the dynamic there was already complicated. Divorced but still living together.
Exactly. That detail alone tells you it's not straightforward.
Then Jay just vanishes.
And this other figure emerges, Larry Weisberg. Marjorie actually pointed the finger at him, said he was the killer.
And he ended up getting immunity for his testimony.
Yeah, which adds another layer of complexity. It's tangled right from the start.
Okay, let's lay out the initial timeline, because that's where the first real problems pop up.
Absolutely.
So Jay returns to Vegas from Florida, September 8th, 2004. That's the last time anyone confirms seeing him alive.
Okay, September 8th.
But Marjorie doesn't report him missing until September 22nd.
Wait, September 22nd?
That's a full 2 weeks later?
2 weeks. Wow. Okay, that's a major red flag right there.
And it gets worse. When she does report him missing,
Yeah.
she claims he'd only been gone for 2 days.
No. So she's shaving off almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
12 days missing from her story.
Exactly. That discrepancy is huge. Investigators must have picked up on that immediately.
You'd have to. What happened in those missing 12 days? Why lie about the timing? So many questions right off the bat.
And then, just over a month later, the discovery.
It was horrific.
October 23rd.
Yeah.
That's when they found his remains.
His torso, specifically. Found in a plastic container just discarded out in the Arizona desert. And DNA confirmed it was Jay.
The details are just chilling. The report said the remains were frozen.
Frozen and dismembered with a saw.
It speaks to something incredibly cold and calculated, doesn't it? Not a crime of passion.
Definitely not. Freezing a body that could slow decomposition, buy time, dismemberment. Well, that makes transport harder, identification harder.
It suggests planning, a real effort to conceal the crime.
Disturbing level of planning, yeah. Not someone panicking.
So by November 13th, not too long after the discovery,
Marjorie was charged. The evidence, it seems, was pointing her way.
and the investigation started turning up some pretty telling details, like receipts,
Receipts for what?
cleaning supplies, lots of them, hinting at a big cleanup effort.
Where? At the house.
Likely the garage. That seems to have been considered the likely murder scene.
Okay, the garage. And wasn't there something about the floor?
Yes. The garage floor was epoxy coated.
Right. Which, on its own might not mean much. But in this context,
In this context, it makes you wonder, was it always like that? Or was it done to make cleaning up blood or, other evidence easier?
it's one of those small details that adds to the overall picture, the potential cover-up.
Then there's the money. Marjorie's spending after Jay disappeared
What did she do?
apparently went on a pretty significant spending spree. There was one report of a $45,000 purchase.
45 grand. While her husband is supposedly just missing.
Yeah. To many people, that suggests, well, a lack of concern, maybe.
Or points towards a financial motive. Especially if she stood to gain.
Which brings us to motive. Even though they were divorced, living together probably meant their finances were still, intertwined.
Right, so she could potentially gain financially from his death. It's a classic motive, unfortunately.
A strong potential motive.
And then you circle back to Larry Weisberg. The prosecution clearly thought his testimony was vital.
Giving him immunity, that's a big step. They must have really needed what he had to say against Marjorie.
Absolutely. It suggests they felt the case against her needed that boost.
And ultimately, the jury bought it. They were convinced.
Guilty, first-degree premeditated murder.
Plus, the other charges, right? Theft, fraud.
Yeah, 2 counts of theft, over $100,000, and 2 counts of fraudulent schemes and artifices.
And the sentence reflected the severity.
Natural life for the murder, no chance of parole, plus concurrent 5-year terms for the other charges.
So, conviction secured, case closed. Not entirely.
Not quite. Because the defense's argument, Marjorie's claim, still hangs in the air.
That Larry Weisberg was the actual killer.
Exactly. She maintained she was innocent of the murder itself, just involved in covering up what he did.
And that immunity deal for Weisberg is it's central to that lingering doubt, isn't it?
It really is. If you can't be prosecuted, what real incentive did he have to tell the absolute, complete truth about his own involvement?
Right. Did he minimize his role? We just don't know for sure. It leaves this huge question mark.
A significant one.
So, was Marjorie the sole mastermind and perpetrator? Or did Weisberg play a much bigger part than the official story suggests?
And Marjorie's own actions don't help her case much, do they?
Not at all. Why wait 2 weeks to report Jay missing?
And why lie about the timeline when she did?
These inconsistencies, they strongly suggest she was trying to mislead investigators from the start.
Regardless of who actually committed the murder, her actions point to deception. Deep deception.
It's also interesting to think about the time period. This was 2004.
Pre-social media dominance, yeah. News traveled differently. Public scrutiny wasn't quite the instant pressure cooker it can be today.
Could that have affected things? How the investigation unfolded, maybe? How the story was initially shaped?
It's possible. Less immediate online sleuthing, less viral outrage, maybe a bit more room for narratives to be controlled early on. It's something to consider.
And, the setting. Las Vegas.
Sin City.
It carries that cultural baggage, right? Crime, nightlife, secrets.
And Marjorie's background as a showgirl fits right into that Vegas narrative, for better or worse.
Did that environment somehow play a role? Or just how people perceive the whole thing?
Hard to say definitively, but it adds a layer, doesn't it? The backdrop is part of the story.
So Marjorie Orbin sits in prison for life. The court decided. But these questions remain.
They do. The role of Larry Weisberg especially, Marjorie's inconsistent statements, the sheer brutality of the crime contrasted with her claims.
The complete truth feels elusive, buried somewhere between the Vegas Strip and that lonely spot in the Arizona desert.
It really highlights how even with a conviction, some cases never feel fully resolved. There are always those shadows.
What part of this leaves you, the listener, wondering the most? Is it the timeline, the Weisberg immunity, the motive?
Lots to chew on there.
Until next time, stay curious and keep your eyes on the evidence.